Hi, yes, still Tiffany. I use she, her pronouns, and I have been in tech about 7 years now. And when I first started, computers weren't my job. I was organizing people, but someone was like, hey, you want to implement some software? And I didn't know I was supposed to say no, so I said yes. And I launched this project, and some of it was good, but some of it was awful. And I was deeply scarred. And I wondered how anything ever worked, and so I started reading up on it and became very, very attached to the idea that, oh, there's humans in the system too. We need to incorporate them. We can't just force push a merge into their brains. So that is the origin of this talk. So since then, I have launched many, many things, some of them great successes, some of them catastrophic failures, but that is working in tech. We are subject to constant change. And who's led a change and it worked? Like you got your team to adopt a new tool or something. Didn't it feel great? Like this thing that you built and put together, like everyone's into it. You're like, yeah, the world is a better place because of me. Who's launched one and it didn't work? It's soul crushing, isn't it? Like, oh, but we're constant change, right? The people who are rolling out the changes don't know why everyone's resisting. The people who are resisting the change don't see why they have to change their perfectly adequate world right now, and so they don't fully adopt the change, and then you end up with subverted processes and shadow IT, which means that the thing that the change implementers were implementing doesn't actually get realized, which means that in 6 to 18 months we're going to do the exact same thing over again, only everyone's more miserable and depressed and hates each other. Okay. So, just as there are a bunch of us nerds who like different frameworks for implementing solutions, so are there a bunch of change nerds who like different frameworks. I'm going to talk about one called the ADKAR method, which is an acronym for these words. And in summary, no one's going to adopt a change if they're not aware that a problem exists. They don't desire the solution you're rolling out. They don't know how to fix it. They're not able to fix it. And we're all humans, so we need to be reminded constantly. And that's the framework that this talk's going to hang on. To be clear, this is not a talk on how to shove a bad change down someone's throat. It's about how to communicate a good change in a way that'll get your code to compile in a human brain. So the very first part of making a change stick is making sure you're working on the right change. And this is, frankly, my favorite part of any change is doing the stakeholder interviews. Because we're part of a system. Everything we do interacts with someone somewhere, right? And so when we see a problem that we want to fix, we need to take into account where the other gears are poking other people. So try and find a representative sample of the people who are going to be impacted by your change and hold a little stakeholder interview. So that first project that I was launching was basically if Facebook and Wikipedia had a baby that liked wearing ties, I was implementing that. And the problem set was that we had consultants going out to customers, writing up their findings, their trip reports, and putting it in a really bad wiki. Slow, painful, no one could find anything. Our support personnel were taking tickets in and doing that in another tool, and our sales personnel were working in yet a third tool. And so this picture of a single customer was just fragmented, and no one could tell, like, oh, I'm working on a support ticket and I don't have the context that a consultant built you a custom module and you're not using the standard one we're used to. That led to a lot of pain. So I interviewed sales and support and customer success to talk about what they had seen in this space. Now, to be clear, ask about the space. Don't preach your solution. Don't be like, I got this great fix, y'all, you're gonna love it. Ask them, because this is a fact-finding mission. You know what you know, but you don't know what they know. And if you don't ask open-ended questions, you're not going to discover anything you don't already know. So, ask them what are the things that keep them awake at night. Ask them what are the things that take way too long, that make them hate coming into work. ask them what they think an ideal day would look like. And then you write every single thing down. Even if they're like, I think the ideal tool will also wash my dishes for me. We're probably not going to roll that out, but write it down anyway. Let them know that they are being heard. Do not create your solution, and also don't make promises. This is not a requirements gathering session. Again, it's a fact-finding mission. You're trying to figure out what exactly are the things that make a good argument for making the change and a good argument for moving away from your current state. So, put it in a nice little section. Here are the deal breakers. Like if you break this thing of mine, I'm probably not going to want your solution. If you make this happen, you'll be my best friend, and I'll, take that hill for you. Be sure that any solution you're rolling out, any idea that you're working on, is going to be fallible. If you can't find a solution that's actually going to make it better overall for everyone, it's not a good change, and you should let it die on the vine. Who has been forced to roll out a change from their leadership just because they needed to put something on a line item somewhere? And who thought it was a terrible thing that should never have happened? Was it easier to make another change later? No, everyone's like, oh, we don't trust you anymore. Don't abuse your ability to make a change. So once you've started working on your change, come back to those stakeholders that you talk to. Because you're not going to be able to make a perfect solution. You're going to have a first launch, and inevitably, people are going to have conflicting needs. So follow up with your stakeholders and be blunt. Let them know what you can do and give them credit for it. Even if you were already going to make sure that you could log into the system, be like, you asked to log into the system, and I made sure that we could do that. And they're going to be like, yeah. It's okay. Who's familiar with IKEA syndrome? So basically, who's familiar with IKEA? Okay. So basically, when you have a mediocre thing and you have been able to build it, it is no longer mediocre. It is suddenly fabulous, and everyone look at my chair. I assembled this thing. And they're like, okay. But to you, it is more special. And if you let people have a piece of assembling the chair that you're going to launch to them, they're going to be into it. So give them as much of that as you can. Give credit for ideas. All right, and again, you're not going to be able to solve everyone's problem, so explain the reasoning behind why you can't give them exactly what they wanted. Explain the trade-offs. Say, hey, FYI, sales has this other need that's in direct conflict with what you need. So for our first launch, we're going to go with what they need in order to get things done. But here are some other ideas that we can do to make sure that you get what you need on the next round. Here are some workarounds. Do these sound good to you? Do you have any other ideas? Is this a deal breaker for you? What this does is it allows them, again, some input into the system. And then when you're launching later, and all their friends are like, oh, well, that doesn't do everything perfectly. They're like, yeah, but sales, blah, blah, blah. And they're like, oh, okay, yeah, sales, okay. That gets you free evangelism points. Use that. Okay, seek consensus if you can. If they're like, oh, man, you're going to destroy everything and I'm going to hate you, you're going to destroy everything and they're going to hate you. Maybe you should reevaluate. They're being upfront with you how hard it's going to be to make sure your change sticks. Listen, try and find a way to make it work for them in a way that's acceptable. And then also, look out for new stakeholders. So that first project I worked on with sales and customer success and support, well, customer success had that wiki, and everyone in the company used the wiki. And everyone in the company hated the wiki. And I was like, oh, cool, this is an easy sell. Nobody wants to use this. But I forgot that the wiki touches everyone, and everyone has opinions. And the solution that gets rolled out needs to take those opinions into account. And so when I started to launch, engineering and HR are like, wait, what? No. And then things happened, and so that one didn't. But That is probably my deepest, most wounding scar. And so I strongly urge you all to always reconsider stakeholders. Is your solution expanding the scope? Think about other people. They have opinions that can impact you. Okay, so you've done your homework. You have come up with your plan. You have run it by your stakeholders. Now it's time to roll things out. Start with the tigers. What are the absolutely terrifying things that are going to happen if we do not roll out this change? You want to make it deeply personal to them. I know we're in tech and we're like, oh man, feelings are squishy and weird and that's like manipulative or something, but no. Here's the thing. If you start with the details and calmly explain that you should don your shoes, get out of your sleeping bag, unzip your tent, head in a northwesterly direction to escape the pile of tigers that are invading the camp, like everyone's already halfway into the guts of the beast, or they've fallen asleep again, and again, being eaten by tigers. What you want to do is you want to make an argument. You're not being manipulative, you are making an emotional argument. You are pointing out real, true things that have an emotional impact. Who here had a little bit of like anxiety when Quintessence was talking about being paged at 3 in the morning? That's an emotional argument. It is not a lie. It is something that people experience and don't want to experience again. Point that out to them. Charts are really nice, but unless there's a massive amount of red, hardly anyone has an emotional impact when they look at a bunch of numbers. So when you're thinking about tigers, talk about recent pain. Remember that time when you tried to fix this thing, but you didn't have the information from sales, and so it all blew up in your face? Sucked, didn't it? Point out future threats. If we don't, like changes in compliance, GCDPR, if there's, ACA isn't in Canada. There are all sorts of compliance issues or competition issues that can be a real motivator. One of my favorites is a misalignment with self-identity. If, as an engineering group or an operations group, you pride yourself on putting the customer first or quality or like whatever it is, if the way we're doing it right now isn't in alignment with that, who here wants to be called a hypocrite? Who here got a little bit of anxiety just thinking that they could be called a hypocrite? So use that, like point out the flaws. Where are we not in alignment with who we want to be, who we think we are? And be like, what we're doing right now is a problem and we need to fix it. All right. So once you have pointed out the tigers, then we move on to the puppies. What are the great things that are going to happen when we do go with this change? Again, you want to make it really personal to them. Much like people don't care about spreadsheets, most people don't care about data quality. What they do care about is going home on time in a nice state of mind because they didn't have to stay late fixing the rollout for the customer because the first time they got it, the data was wrong, and now the customer is angry and yelling at them because the data quality was bad. Make them know that once we've rolled out this change, that pain is going away. Point out if it's going to make their work easier or less, or if it's going to become more interesting. You don't have to click the same button over and over and over and over again. Continued employment is not do this or I fire you. It is if we do this change, we will still stay competitive in the market and our business will not close. This argument only works if you like your coworkers. For the greater good, whether that's like contributing back to the tech community or your local community or green initiatives for the earth and the environment. And again, with self-identity, with the Facebook Wiki Baby tool, one of the arguments was like, hey, we're a bunch of fun people and we like spending time with each other. So this tool will allow us not only to keep track of what's going on in our work projects, but also we'll have Magic the Gathering tournament pages and karaoke pages, and because we're fun people that like each other, we will interact with each other there because it's who we are. All right. So you have pointed out the tigers lying in wait. You have shown them the glorious puppies in their future. Now and only now do you move on to the details. Never, ever start here. If you start here, they will get bored, they will get tired, they will zone out. Has anyone seen this scenario? You're at an all-hands meeting, and an engineer steps up and says, we have added a drop-down field in Jira to track the source of the bugs that you find. So choose customer or QA or other. And that was it, right? And then like 6 months later, nobody even knows what this drop-down is for. And no one's used it, and they don't have the data they want because they didn't explain why they needed it. They didn't make it personal to them. You're like, you're making me add 2 seconds to every single ticket I touch for Bueller? Like, who's seen that? Who's done that? Okay, never start here. You really need people on your side before they're going to pay enough attention to lock this in their memory. One time, my boss was like, Tiffany, we're gonna move our chairs from this side of the office to the other side of the office. Can you make that happen? And I got that military background. I'm like, yes, ma'am. And I had this perfect plan. I'm like, okay, here's the ideal setup for these chairs, and here's the order that the desks need to be moved so we don't have a blockage in the hallway, and here's the times that we're going to start rolling these out. And I sent it out to everyone, and they're like, but why? I'm like, what do you mean, but why? The boss said so. And they're like, yeah, but I have this window. I'm like, yeah, but there's windows over there too. Like, no, but there's this bird that sits outside the tree of my window. And I'm like, do you want me to move your desk for you? And it's because we didn't start off with why it's worth leaving your bird friend to sit on the other side of the office where the rest of the department is. So please also fight your inner read the flippin' manualist, because we all have different learning styles. Especially in tech, we almost make it a prerequisite that you must be able to single-handedly dive into docs and man pages to figure out what's going on, but not everybody learns effectively that way. So we tend to only think of how we would want to learn, but try and think about other people, which is kind of the theme of this talk. If you're a visual person, maybe this is a better way to think of this. And I'm not saying that you need to roll out a minimum of 7 different learning methods for every change you write. One of my favorite ways is when I launch, like I'm writing the docs as I'm creating the solution, but when I launch, I have an optional hands-on lab that I record. So people who learn best in group settings can join this. They can hear me say out loud with my face what I'm doing. And people that learn best by hearing gets that stuck in their brain more. They get to try it IRL, and if someone likes hearing this, luckily I'm recording this. If they're not a group person, if they can't focus, if other people are right there with them, they can just watch the recording later and get the exact same thing. I've only done 1 class, but I have hit all of these. I'm going over the same docs that I wrote. So, also, if you have not yet made friends with someone on your docs team, you should do that. They're going to be your BFF. They're going to help you make sure that the notes that you took are actually legible and easily consumable. All right, so after you've told them how, sometimes people need to be convinced that they're able to. You want to give them someone they can emulate. You want to say, you want to be like Mike. So, a really great way to do this is to get another human in your system to try it out. 1, you get to find all the bumps where they had trouble rolling this out. But 2, when you're rolling it out, you can be like, hey, Mike already did this. Hey, Mike, how effective was this new pipeline procedure you did? And people go, oh, Mike did it. I want to be like Mike. Okay, this is a thing I can do. When you walk through the steps that Mike took to do this, you want to be as detailed as possible. The more story-like it can be, the more sticky it will be in their brains. That being said, the simplest solutions are the easiest to remember. Who here likes nerding out on the fine details of their systems? That's our job. Who likes nerding out on the fine details of other people's systems? What about when those systems are the finance team? Or HR? Or sales ops? We have to really care about details if we're going to memorize what's happening there. And it's really hard to get people to care about every detail. We only have so much space in our brain. So when you make this smooth in change management parlance, this is called clearing the path. When you make this so simple that they don't need to read a doc or take a class to do it, it's so much easier for them to do, and they're far more likely to adopt your change. So keep that in mind when you're implementing. Like, the simplest thing, abstract away as much complexity as humanly possible. So show the mic, clear the path. Oh, ability. If the manager says you're not allowed to use the tool that Tiffany built, then they can't use the tool that Tiffany built. So make sure you have management's blessing. And impostor syndrome. So again, with those bumps that people come across when they're trying out your change, every bump feels like a mountain. You want to remove as many of those as possible, but when you can't, because sometimes it's just not possible at the stage that the software you're working with is at, subvert that imposter syndrome. One of the changes I rolled out was an HR tool that the reason we chose it was because it was so simple that nobody needed a lesson on how to use it. Everyone just went in and like, oh, I need to change my direct deposit. Oh, oops, I did it, the end. It was beautiful, except for this one part. It was the manager's time tracking approval system. And it was just a hot mess. No one had designed it since 1996. There were 7 different ways you could get to one page, which wasn't the page you were looking for, and every manager we had stumbled on this. By this point, they all knew that if they had problems, they would go to Confluence. So our main troubleshooting page was like, if you've reached this page, you probably need this GIF of a baby monkey. It'll loop for as long as you need it to. It's not you, it's the tool. And then underneath, we put all the screenshots and made it very clear that it wasn't them. We tried to make it as good as we could, and this is as far as we could get. And it helped. So anytime you have a hard fiddly bit, be sure to include a therapy kitten page. Hooray! You've launched your tool. Everyone desires your fix. They know that what they're doing is terrible. They're able to fix it. They know how to fix it. We're done now, right? Who's launched a thing that they thought went swimmingly? And again, 6 months later, no one's doing it. Who here is human? Surprisingly, not a lot of hands. We are all human. We need reminders. So, how do you keep that commitment alive? It's often like a relationship. This is a puppy wedding that happened at work. You need to keep coming back to why you made this change. You need to remind people how to do it. And often, if someone hasn't rolled out your change, they're either really busy or really terrified. And the way to address this in both situations is to offer help. So if you have a way of tracking, all these teams rolled out this new pipeline except for these 2, you can go and say, hey, what's going on? Do you need help? Was something unclear? And maybe they just forgot. And asking them what happened, it goes, oh, yeah, I need to bring that into the sprint. Iteration. Much like a relationship, you need to keep on making it better. Okay, so when you inevitably have a flaw with what you just launched, you need to fix it. Put it on your calendar. When you're launched, you're not done. Go back and make a fix, and then publicly announce, hey, we heard you complain that this button wasn't working correctly, and so we fixed it. Please let us know more things you want. And people are like, oh, you listened? well, that's weird. I kind of like it. And they'll, one, go, oh, crap, I was supposed to log into that thing. And two, they will log into the thing. Do you have materials? Oh, metrics. Metrics are similar. If you can point to a thing and say, look, it's going up and to the right, people are like, oh, crap, I didn't do the thing, and I want to be part of the up and rightness. Just remind them gently. Onboarding. New people are a font of enthusiasm and anxiety. They're really excited that they have a job. They're terrified that some mistake has been made and everyone's going to find out. And so if you have really good onboarding docs and you can make them feel successful right off the bat, they're going to be like, I did the thing. And the rest of the team's going to be like, the thing? Oh, shit, the thing. So use that. Again, work with your docs friends and make sure that it's something they can find. We don't always have the ability to end-of-life support for the old way of doing things, but if you do, use it. There is nothing better for getting people to use your way than it being the only way that it can be done. Yeah. Okay, if you are into taking pictures of summary slides, now is the time to turn on your phone, because here they come. This talk has been about the ADKAR method. ADKAR stands for Awareness, Desire, Knowledge, Ability, and Reinforcement. What are the tigers? What are the puppies? Knowledge is always in the middle. Never start here. Make sure they're allowed to, and remind them because we're all human. If you've enjoyed this topic and want to read about it over and over and over again, here are some books I recommend. Think of a dad joke. Okay, and thank you, Vancouver. Is there time for questions? One question. The answer is, it depends. Actually, okay, instead of answering a question, one of my favorite things to do is to come up with good arguments for pointing out a tiger. For instance, if you are spending a lot of money on a thing, rather than saying, we're spending this many dollars on a thing, get a bunch of Hot Wheels and be like, each of these Hot Wheels is a Tesla, and that's how much money we're throwing away every year. You're like, oh, crap. So if you want to brainstorm ideas like that, find me in the hallway. I'm the one with the rainbow hair.
Tiffany, everyone.